At the beginning of your day and before every take, the first thing that you hear is start your engine. So it doesn't matter what energy you've come into the car with, the second that you hear over like 150 engines starting up all together and everyone's revving, you're in a completely different headspace.
Mad Max was een begrip in de jaren 80. De post-apocalyptische wereld, het eindeloze gekros in die idiote auto's in de Australische Outback. En natuurlijk vooral de zwijgzame held Max Rokitansky, gespeeld door Mel Gibson. Ze sloegen gewoon aan. Maar naar Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome, bleef het lang stil rond Mad Max. Tot regisseur George Miller in 2015, precies 30 jaar na Thunderdome, met een vervolg kwam. Hier in Cannes. De film heette Mad Max Fury Road en de actie daarin was zo heerlijk over de top dat hij zelfs de serieuze filmpers hier omverblies. De held was nog steeds Mad Max, maar er was ook een heldin bijgekomen. Badass Furiosa. En zij stal toch echt de show. Fury Road werd een wereldsucces. En er kwam weer een vervolg. Of liever een prequel over Furiosa, die nu toch echt het stokje heeft overgenomen van Mad Max.
As a child, my world was forever changed. My mother was magnificent. And he took it all from me.
Who do we have here?
She's from a place of abundance.
This is our destiny.
My childhood, my mother, I want them back. I want them back!
How do you outdo a film like Fury Road without copying the best bits?
Well, the biggest mistake is to copy what's already been done. When you attempt something like this, it needs to be uniquely familiar in some way. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. You're just repeating what's happened before, and that's doing nobody. That's not of interest to anybody, really. This is quite different in many ways, I think. One is that story happened in a very compressed period of time, 3 days and 2 nights. We had to pick up all the exposition on the run. This one had happens over 18 years. So already the rhythms of the story are different. This film butts directly into Fury Road. And yet we had to sort of be able to understand who she was, how she was forged by being in this world, and that was an interesting thing to take on, because we had to have 2 actors playing that role. We had to age a lot of the characters across those 18 years. We had to see the world change and evolve or disintegrate. So all of that was an interesting thing to take on as storytelling.
All right, line me up. Come on.
There's this great line in the film, today we dance to Darwin and we live in troublesome times. Do you think we'll be dancing to Darwin soon?
Probably. I mean, you can look at it as a cautionary tale in terms of what the world could turn into any time, or you can also look at it as like when that comes, how do you cling on to your humanity?
Which is a huge question. Do you think the film, in a way, answers that question?
I don't think the best stories try and answer those questions. I think they leave you in a kind of unraveled.
Once I had decided to make this project with George, he asked me to justify the movie to him. He said, "Why are we making this film? What's the point?" And I said that I've always felt that Mad Max movies are very entertaining cautionary tales. It's fun to see the wasteland on screen. We all love it. I don't know a single person who actually wants to live in that reality. And so I think in being able to portray it in this sort of a way, it very subtly asks people to ask questions of themselves and think about their choices and kind of understand the repercussions of if we continue as a society in this way.
Mm-hmm. Both films they operate on the edge of the ridiculous and the sublime. How do you make sure as a director that you stay on the right side?
Oh...
You don't. You just hope.
It's in the process. It's feeling it through, as you're writing, as you're performing it, as it's being performed, as you're executing, and then in the cutting room. That's a thing. That's a thing that you sort of balancing all the time.
It's really interesting to challenge yourself when you're telling a story, and often it does involve going, well, actually, if we push that moment into the absurd, in a way that feels rooted, in a way that feels emotionally embodied, but it's just flirting with that sense of the absurd, then we land the next moment in a totally different way. Whereas if you try and kind of establish a very even tone where everything is happening is very serious or everything happening is very quirky, the audience kind of sit back a bit. So actually really challenging yourself to play tonally with things so that it goes from the sublime to the absurd, to the ridiculous, to the tragic, to the sad, to the serious. That's when something feels live when you're watching it. I think that's when the audience are on the edge of their seat.
Remember me.
You fabulous thing. You crawled out of a pitiless grave deeper than hell. Only one thing's gonna do that for you. Not hope. Hate. No shame in hate. It's one of the great forces of nature. That wasn't hope, that was instinct.
Film also has great rhythm, pulsating beat. Is that something you already felt on set?
Yeah.
The start your engines is what would be yelled across the set before a take, and every
It's very rock and roll.
vehicle and car would ignite and erupt, and so the pulsing energy and the heartbeat of the film was prominent and real, and immediately sort of put you in the space.
It doesn't matter what energy you've come into the car with. The second that you hear over like 150 engines starting up all together and everyone's revving, you're in a completely different headspace.
Also interesting, like in regards to pace, as an actor, you're constantly sort of wondering and looking to the director to figure out how does this fit into the puzzle? You have your idea, but are we on the same track? Is my performance in line with the rhythm that you want the film to have? And the sort of mastery of someone like George Miller to understand, years out the pace and rhythm to something, and understand where the sort of music cues are and the shots are designed around that. Whereas the more inexperienced directors, you get your close-up, your wide, your MCU, so on. And then afterwards, now wonder what music fits to it. Whereas it's sort of the orchestration of it so far in advance, I think, is why he is just such a genius,
There's this constant beat, this very driving rhythm in this film. How did you work on that on set, for instance?
I would answer it the same way as a choreographer. That's part of the job. I think that's you're always aware of rhythm of language, of delivery of language, of movement in conjunction with the camera. That's carried onto the cutting, and the rhythms that you find in the cutting room, which are much more important. Film is visual music, so you're trying to find those rhythms, and it's interesting when you get to work with the composer, how they are looking for the beat that comes out of the blocking and the visual rhythms of a movie. I found that with, I found that first with John Williams, the wonderful composer. I was working on a film in the 80s in Witches of Eastwick. And I remember in our first session, we had flatbeds and celluloid then, he was sort of counting almost in his mind what the beats were. And he said very quickly, I can see it's done in this time and whatever. I said, what are you talking about? There's no music in it. He said, no, I'm feeling the rhythms of it. And he picked up the rhythm in the performance of the actors and what was happening. I think that just happens. I think that happens. I think that's intrinsic. I had no idea that was happening there. You're a little bit aware of it as you're shooting now, not specific rhythms, but understanding that it had to have a flow. There's something graceful about a particular flow that you're looking for. I think it's that's the best answer I can give you. Yes.
Il fait toujours beau au-dessus des nuages. Et moi, si j'étais un oiseau, j'irais danser sous l'orage. Je traverserais les nuages comme le fait la lumière. J'écouterais sous la pluie la symphonie des éclairs.